Hey there, beautiful teachers. Today I want to talk to you about teen piano students. More specifically, teenagers who did not start with you, who are transferring to you from another teacher. And these students come in all different shades and stripes, and we need to understand them a little bit better. And then we're going to look together at what we can do with them, what the most important things are, what types of lesson activities we should be doing with these students, and how we can have success with them for the long term. Now, as with absolutely all students, and as I will say until I am blue in the face, the first and most important thing we have to do is meet with the student and parent before they start lessons. Don't start with the first lesson. Don't just quickly chat over the phone or over email and then get started. Meet with them first. It really is so important. The most important thing we're going to try and find out at this meeting, which is somewhat different to younger students, is where is the motivation for lessons coming from? So with my younger students, I do care whether the parent wanted the lessons or the kid did, but it's not a deal breaker for me. Whereas with a teenager, if the motivation is entirely coming from the parent side, that is a red flag and a big no from me. There aren't many things that will cause me to say no to a student. In fact, I can't really think of any. But there are a few things that will make me say no to a parent. And those are my qualifiers, right? If a parent comes to me right away, like in an email or on the phone or whatever, or when I first meet with them, it hasn't come up until then, and they say, actually, Alice doesn't really want to do piano, but I know it's so important for her, so we have a deal that she has to do lessons until she graduates from secondary school or high school. I'm sorry, but that is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for resentment, for sure. It's different if the student just doesn't care. That's fine. They're just like, oh, I'm not really gone either way. I'm being a bit of a teenager about it. That's fine. But if the student is dead set against, they say, I hate piano, or I dislike, I don't like, I don't want to do music lessons. For me, that is a red flag, and that is a no-go zone. Because I have had those students in the past. And if you haven't, if you have a different experience from me, you can let me know. But if you haven't had these types of students, I'll just share my experience with you. I have had a few students quite early on in my teaching years where the parent insisted the teen did piano, continued with piano, and the teen was just not into it and really had never been that into it even as a child. But now that they were a teenager, they were starting to rebel against it or just be a bit more vocal about it. And so they've come to me, and the worst case is the parent wants the teen to do exams. They're insistent that they have to keep going through piano exams, and yet the teen doesn't even want to do piano. There's no way of making this happen unless the parent is also going to insist on practice, which in my case I have never come across. I've come across many parents who insist their child or their teen does piano, but I've not come across any parent who does that with the teen or the child hating piano while also insisting on daily practice. Maybe you've met these parents. I haven't. I have met many who don't want to be involved in practice and yet will insist on continuing the lessons. And it's just, to what end? What are we doing here? If it's that the teen doesn't want to practice, but is happy to learn a bit about music, that's also fine with me. Might not be fine with you. But if we're in a case where they're going to come to the lesson, be grumpy, not want to participate, not want to give me their opinions, not want to do anything because they've already decided against this, and the fact that their parent is insisting on them doing it is making them even more against it, because that's how most teenagers work, then it's just miserable all round. So I won't do that. However, we're going to move forward, assuming that your new teen piano transfer student is either up for piano, up for lessons, or they're just a bit meh. That's acceptable to me. If they're like, I'm not really sure, it's kind of been okay, but... and their parent wants them to do it, that's fine. Okay, so if they're meh, I'm up for the challenge. If they don't want to do it, I'm not doing it either. And if they're all gung-ho for it, then even better. What should we do next? So this is a teen transfer student. They may have had a few months of lessons. They may have had years and years of lessons. But the first thing I want to find out from them is, what is their favorite thing that they have done? And even if they're a bit meh, they might have something that they were less meh about than another thing, right? So what's their favorite thing that they've done? And it's a new teenage piano student. They might not straight away want to tell you all their innermost thoughts and feelings, but you can kind of try and get them to open up a bit. Like, oh, did they perform at any stage? Did they enjoy that? Did they learn this type of piece or that type of piece? What piece did they like more? Was there a particular book they liked? Did they like improvising? Did they like this? Did they like that? I wouldn't spew all this out at once, but I'd gradually try and get them to open up about what they actually enjoyed the most. And maybe also what they enjoyed the least. It doesn't mean I'm going to completely never do scales again if they say they hate scales, but it does mean I'm going to take that into consideration and acknowledge it when I bring those things up in the future. Pick out pieces that I think they might like because they said they like this other one and let them know why I think so. And that it's fine to tell me if they don't like this new piece I picked out and why that is. So we're starting that conversation, right? The other thing we need to do, alongside starting to get to know them, is to assess their level. And we need to do it subtly. That doesn't mean hiding it, but it needs to not take over the whole first lesson or for several lessons where we're just testing them. Because, I mean, would you like that? Let's say you went back to lessons right now. Let's say maybe not for your main instrument, but you had a secondary instrument, like I did 2 years of flute, let's say, which is true. I did 2 years of flute. I couldn't really play anything now. I think I can still make a sound, but that's about it. But let's say I went back to flute lessons and the teacher just gave me endless sight reading exercises and said, oh, you can't play that one. Okay, let's try this easier one. Oh, and do you know what that means? Do you know what that means? I mean, not a great start. To feel like you're completely on show when maybe you're a bit rusty, like maybe they haven't had lessons, maybe there's been a bit of a gap. And also, this teacher, us, we're going to talk differently to how their previous teacher did, etc. So, we try to subtly assess their level, and all the while we're aware and cognizant of the facts of how and why they left their previous teacher. So did they leave the previous teacher because they moved and they had no choice? Or because that teacher moved and they had no choice? In that case, maybe they really liked their previous teacher. Or did they leave the previous teacher because they decided they weren't a good fit for them? So maybe they didn't like them, or their parent didn't like them, or there was some issue, or they just were ready to move on. That's very different to if they really loved and were attached to their previous teacher, and now they just have to take lessons with us. We may know we're wonderful, but from their perspective, it's a difficult change to make, and they might be reluctant to do so even if they are doing so. So I mentioned that in the context of the level, because if we are trying to assess their level, no matter what, we never want to talk badly about the previous teacher. But we want to be extra careful if they loved their previous teacher. We want to be extra careful of what we say about what they've done or how they've done it or the progress they've made, etc. if they really love their previous teacher and were very attached to them. Because there's no better way to get your relationship off on a bad foot than to tell someone that you don't like someone that they like. Right? Let's say you're at a networking mixer thing and someone walks up to you and you mention, oh, hey, I think you also know Claire. And they say, oh, Claire. And Claire's like your best friend. I mean, are you going to like this person? Are you going to have a bit of a prejudgment about who they are if they hate Claire? Just saying. So, no matter what, we're not going to talk badly about the previous teacher because that's just unprofessional and unnecessary. But we want to be extra cautious if they were very attached to them. But we are going to gradually try and assess their level. This video is sponsored by Vivid Practice. Managing student assignments shouldn't be a hassle. vividpractice.com makes it easy to track progress, streamline assignments, and encourage better practice habits without the clutter of unnecessary features. Designed by music teachers for music teachers, Vivid Practice keeps students engaged with simple, effective tools like practice modes, progress tracking, and built-in messaging. Spend less time managing and more time teaching. Try vividpractice.com today with a free account. So how do we do that? We do need to do a little bit of sight reading. I like to go way easier than I think I should. That's to start them off easy, possibly give them a confidence boost, and also avoid any feeling that I think they should be at a certain level, which they might not be at. Which, to be honest, in many of the cases of transfer students I get, they are not at the reading level that I would expect for their level. And here in Ireland, that means what exam grade have they taken a lot of the time. So they've taken grade 5. My grade 5 students would be able to read at a certain level. I'm not going to expect this student or have any expectation of that. And I'm not going to show them a piece of music that's anywhere close to that level as the first thing, because then, teens are smart. They're going to pick up on the fact that you gave them something harder and then gradually gave them easier things. So we want to do the opposite of that so we don't communicate the wrong information. So we start super easy. I actually often go all the way back to piano pronto prelude. Not because it's my favorite method or there's anything amazingly special about doing that, just because it's a simple, uncluttered book that doesn't look like a method book. So in case they are sensitive of being treated as a beginner, this is just easy music. It's not like a beginner book, even though it is. So I'll take them back to there and I'll try them with the first reading piece in the book, the first hands together piece. And then I'll jump forward. So if they play that beautifully, great, jump to the next book. If they're tiny bit hesitant, I'm thinking, okay, they might just be nervous, even if it is very easy for them. So I'll jump forward quite a big chunk of that book and just see how it goes. And then I'll kind of progress through the levels of piano pronto or any other series that I'm using as a reference point. I'm looking for the point at which they can kind of read it, but it takes a bit of effort and it's not really polished. I don't want something that they can't read at all, that's a real struggle, that they're stopping and using mnemonics to figure out every note or something like that. That's going to be tough. That's not a good starting point. We don't want to reach that level. But we don't want it to be so easy that they're thinking, what is this lady even doing? Why is she asking me to read this? Right? Important point about this. This is a sight reading thing. We're jumping through books. We're making it as painless as possible. We're acknowledging to them hey, this isn't music we're necessarily going to learn. I'm just trying a few different things to see where we're at. Something kind of vague. This can take no more than 5 to 10 minutes of your first lesson. If we're talking about 10 minutes of a 30-minute lesson, which a teenager wouldn't be starting with 30 minutes with me, they'd be starting with 45 probably. 10 minutes of a 30-minute lesson, that's an absolute maximum. 33% of the lesson was sight reading. Whew, that's a lot. So we want to make sure to make this as small as possible. And we wouldn't necessarily assign them a reading thing to do after that first lesson. We're just trying to get a general sense, a little bit, of where their reading's at. The rest of the lesson is spent doing other things. So we might play a game. I'm not afraid to use games with teenagers. We might also do some chording, some improvisation, a rote piece. All of those things can provide a really good quick win that doesn't communicate anything to them about what we think of their abilities. Because, at least for me, most students I teach have not done rote pieces before, have not improvised, and maybe even have never played any chords. So they have no sense of what those things are, and I'm just introducing them to new things, giving them something to play around with during the week. So we do some kind of thing like that. If they did open up to me in the beginning and I found out their favourite band or whatever, and I happen to know that band or singer has a song that has simple chords, easy quick win, pull it up on Spotify, pull the chord chart up on Guitar Tab or Ultimate Guitar or whatever, and then play along with it. Very simple, and they get to feel like they're doing something really cool. So as I mentioned, maybe I'm starting to get them to open up about genres they like, bands they like, songs they like, something. or maybe that comes later. But that takes little nudges over time and just little questions. Some teens, sure, they'll be exuberant and open up to you right away, like they love this and that and whatever. A lot of them, though, are not going to tell you right away because they haven't decided whether you're cool enough to accept whatever it is that they like. Now, here's the really, really important thing about that. You better be cool enough. And that doesn't mean that you know the band or that you're into it. You could only like Beethoven. I don't care. By being cool enough, I mean that they say the band, you take it, without a reaction of any negative facial expression or definitely any saying anything negative, like, oh, you like those? You like that? No, but we don't want a face to say that either. So let's make sure our reaction is either, oh, cool, I've heard this song by them, or if you've never heard of the band or the genre or whatever, then you just say something about looking it up during the week, and then the following week you mention something about that to them to show that you really did listen to it. If it is completely unsuitable for ever playing on the piano, that is fine. But if there is something in there that you could play on the piano, bring it up, teach it to them. It could be a little riff, it could be a chord sequence. It doesn't have to be something huge and a big momentous project, and you don't have to learn 13 pages of sheet music. Okay? But you can do something small that acknowledges that you appreciate their taste in music, that you've taken an interest in them and listened to what they said. That goes a long way. Which brings me to the most important thing you can do with your new teenage student. Build a relationship. You don't have to be their best friend. You don't have to like the music they like. You don't have to get their fashion sense, right? But you need to build a relationship where they know that you value their opinions and treat them as a person, and then they will give you their respect in return. Doesn't matter who you are, I promise you, that is what you need. And that is the most important thing you can do in the first several months with this student. It is not any kind of musical knowledge you can impart to them. It is about building a relationship with them that is based on mutual respect. When it comes to fixing things, and look, there's probably going to be some things you want to fix. Even if they had an excellent previous teacher, they're not a finished product yet, right? There's going to be things in their playing, aspects of their reading, aspects of their technique, or something else that you think you want to improve. Or there may be vast areas that you think are lacking in their education so far. That's fine, that's all well and good, and you should know those things as their teacher. But slow and steady wins the race with this. If you jump straight into, okay, well, you really don't know how to read, so we're going to start right at the beginning, and here's what an interval is, you have lost them. Because you didn't listen to them as a person first. You didn't connect with them with the music that they love, or show the music they could love. You just jumped right into, you are a problem, I need to fix you. And no one likes to feel like that. So you can fix these things later, and you can even open them up to new genres of music. If they say they're never going to like classical music, that actually might change if you build the relationship first. It's relationship first, love of piano, close second as our goal, and then everything else, gently does it, let it percolate, give it time, little nudges will get you there. So if you've been bamboozled by teen piano transfer students, I hope this gives you some direction to go in and helps you see that it can be a wonderful experience. I actually love getting teenage transfers because, as I said, most of them have never encountered chord patterns, improvisation, rote pieces, pop music, lots of other stuff within their piano lessons. And for many of them, that brings them so much joy that they had never seen in their lessons before. And I get to be the one that gives that to them, and that's amazing. So I hope that going forward, you will feel more positive about teen piano transfers too. Let me know your top tips for teaching teens. I would love to hear them.